The blanket in the snow. The cold wind blew hard across the colony streets. Jace pulled his jacket tighter around him as he walked home. The night was quiet, and snow covered the ground like a heavy white blanket. His boots crunched softly as he passed rows of metal shelters and broken buildings. Jace was tired. He had worked 12 hours fixing machines at the repair station. His back hurt, and his stomach was empty. Still, he didn't rush. Something about the silence tonight felt strange. Then he heard it, a soft sound, like a whimper, faint and almost lost in the wind. Jay stopped and turned his head. There, behind an old fuel tank, was a small shadow. He took a few steps closer and saw her, an alien woman. She was sitting on the frozen ground, back pressed against the metal. Her arms were wrapped around a small child who didn't move. Her skin was pale purple, almost blue from the cold. Her eyes were half closed, lips trembling. Her clothes were thin, wet with snow, and torn in many places. Jace looked around. No, one else had noticed. People walked past, heads down, eyes blind. He stepped closer. "Hey, are you all right?" he asked gently. The woman didn't answer. She just looked up at him. Her eyes were wide and filled with something deep: pain, fear, and shame. The child in her arms gave a tiny cough. Jace's chest tightened. He had no family, no home worth speaking of. Only a small room, one thin blanket, and a single credit in his pocket. He had saved that credit for food tomorrow, but now he turned around and walked straight to a nearby trader's stall. The trader, a greedy alien named Rorn, laughed when Jace showed him the credit. "1 credit? That's nothing." "I need a blanket," Jace said. Rorn smirked. "That one," he pointed to a thin but warm thermal sheet, "is the cheapest. Exactly 1 credit." Without a word, Jace handed it over. He could hear his stomach growling, but he ignored it. He walked back through the snow, the blanket rolled under his arm. The alien woman was still there, still shivering, still holding her silent child. He knelt beside her and gently placed the blanket around both of them. "Here," he said. "It's warm. Use it." She looked at the blanket, then at him. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Just a single tear rolled down her cheek. Jace didn't wait for thanks. He stood up and walked away, heading back to his small room. The snow was falling harder now. Inside his room, the heater barely worked. The walls creaked in the wind. Jace sat on his bed now alone and stared at the floor. He wondered if the child would live. He wondered if the woman would even survive the night. He wanted to go back, but he didn't have anything left to give. That night, Jace didn't sleep well. He kept thinking of her face, her eyes, her silence, the way the world had walked past her like she didn't exist. The next morning, Jace woke early. The snow had stopped, but the cold remained. He walked back to the same place behind the fuel tank. She was gone. Only a patch of melted snow remained where she had sat. Jace looked around. No sign of her. No footprints. No one who cared. He stood there, alone, the wind brushing against his face. "She's gone," he whispered to himself. He turned back, feeling heavier than before. But that night, as he sat alone eating nothing, someone knocked on his door. Knock. Knock. Jace stood up, confused. No one ever came to visit. He opened the door and froze. There she was, the alien widow. She stood in the snow again, arms wrapped around the same child, and in her hands was the blanket he had given her. She held it out to him. Her lips moved. Just one word. "Why?" Jace didn't know what to say. She stood there in the snow again, holding the blanket he gave her just last night. Her arms were trembling, and her child's head rested against her chest, eyes closed but breathing. The woman's skin still looked cold and weak. She held the blanket out like she wanted to return it. "Why?" she asked again. her voice soft and broken. Jace slowly stepped outside. His breath showed in the air. "You were freezing," he said. "Anyone would have helped." She shook her head. "No, no one did. Only you." She still didn't walk in. She just stood there, waiting. "You and your child can stay the night," Jace offered. Still, she didn't move. It was like something inside her was stopping her from trusting. Jace stepped back and opened the door wider. "Please, come in." She finally entered. The child shivered, and Jace quickly grabbed his own blanket from his bed and wrapped it around them both. The woman didn't say thank you, she just lowered her head. "I'm Jace," he said quietly. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then replied in a whisper, "Velari." Her voice was soft, unsure, as if she hadn't said her name aloud in a long time. The room was small, only one bed, one broken heater, and a chair. Jace gave them the bed. He sat on the floor. The silence between them was long, heavy. Then her child coughed, a dry, weak sound. Jace looked over. "Does he need help?" "He's tired, hungry. But we'll leave soon," Velari said. "You don't have to." She looked up, confused. "You don't want us here." "I do," Jace said, honest and clear. "It's cold out there. Stay, just until things are better." Velari stared at him. Her expression was strange, like she wanted to believe him, but couldn't. Morning came, and Jace woke early. The child was still asleep. Velari stood near, the door quiet, wrapped in the blanket. She didn't look at him, her face was blank. "I'll bring some food," Jace said. He left quickly. He traded his tools, his wrench and scanner, for a small bag of soup cubes and stale bread. It was all he could afford. He hurried back. But when he returned, they were gone. The blanket was folded neatly on the bed. Nothing else remained. Days passed. Jace searched the refugee camp after work. He asked questions. He looked near the waste piles and the food lines. No one had seen her. Some even told him to stop looking. "Too dangerous to care," one man muttered. But Jace couldn't forget her eyes. That quiet why still echoed in his head. He didn't understand why it hurt so much. She wasn't family. She wasn't even human. But still, her pain had felt real, deep, like someone who had lost everything and didn't expect to ever be seen again. A week later, a storm hit the colony. The wind howled. Snow poured from the sky in thick waves. People stayed inside. The refugee shelters were packed with freezing bodies. Jace stayed in bed, staring at the wall. His room felt colder without her there. He thought of the child, so small and sick. He imagined them out there, lost in the snow. Then, a noise. Knock. 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 Fast. Weak. Urgent. Jace jumped up and ran to the door. Velari stood outside. But this time, she wasn't alone. Two rough-looking alien men stood behind her. One held her arm. The other gripped the child by the collar. "She says you're her protector," the taller alien growled. "That true, human?" Jace blinked in shock. "What's going on?" She ran. Owed debts. Broke laws. "She belongs to the Zone Masters," the alien hissed. Velari said nothing. Her eyes were full of silent panic. Jace stepped forward, fists clenched. "Let them go." The alien laughed. "Then buy them." Jace froze. "Give us something worth more than her life," the alien sneered. Jace looked around his small room. He had nothing left except he walked over to his bed. Under the mattress was his father's old ID badge, something Jace had held on to all his life. That badge gave access to inner colony zones, worth a fortune in the black market. Jace took it and handed it over. "Now leave," he said. The aliens grinned and released her. When the door shut again, Velari fell to her knees. Tears rolled down her face as she whispered, "Why do you keep saving me?" Jace knelt beside her, gently lifting her chin. because someone should. The room was warm, but the silence between them was cold. Jace stirred the pot slowly, watching the soup boil over a tiny electric stove. It wasn't much, just broth, a few scraps of meat, and dry herbs he found in the cupboard. Still, it smelled better than anything they'd had in days. Vaylari sat near the wall, holding her son in her lap. The child had stopped coughing, though. His breathing was still shallow. He didn't speak, just blinked slowly and rested his head against his mother. Jace placed 2 bowls on the floor and handed one to her. Here, eat. It's not fancy, but it's hot. Vaylari didn't take it right away. She stared at the bowl like it was a trap. Then, slowly, she reached out and held it in her hands, like it might disappear. She lifted the spoon and brought it to her lips. The moment the warm soup touched her tongue, something inside her cracked. She froze. Tears welled in her eyes. Jace didn't say anything. He sat across from her, sipping from his bowl quietly. He pretended not to notice when one tear rolled down her cheek and dropped into the soup. Her hands trembled as she ate. Her eyes stayed low. "My people," she said softly, voice shaking. "We don't beg, not even in death." Jace looked up but said nothing. She kept going, as if the silence gave her permission to speak. "I lost my husband in the mines. We had nothing left. No food, no roof. I tried to find help. All I got was—" She looked down at her child. Jace felt his fists clench. "I was ready to lie down in the snow," she whispered. "Let it take me." She looked at Jace now. Her eyes were not just tired, they were broken. "But you gave me your last credit. Why?" The same question again. He sighed. "I saw a mother holding her child. What else was I supposed to do?" Her lips pressed tight. She didn't speak again. But something changed in her eyes. Trust, small, but real. Later that night, the child finally spoke. "Warm," he whispered. One word. Then he fell asleep in his mother's arms. Vaylari smiled. A real smile, weak but beautiful. She looked at Jace with soft eyes. "You saved him." Jace shook his head. "He saved himself. I just boiled water." She laughed once. It was soft, almost like music. She hadn't laughed in weeks, maybe longer. Jace looked at her, and for the first time didn't just see an alien woman. He saw a person, a survivor, a mother with a heart too heavy and eyes too deep. "Sleep here," Jace said. "Both of you. Stay as long as you need." Vaylari lowered her eyes again. "Are you sure? This is your space." Jace looked around at the tiny metal walls, the creaking heater, the rusty floor. He smiled. "Doesn't feel like mine anymore." That night, as snow fell outside, the small room felt warm. Vaylari slept with her child in the bed. Jace curled up on the floor, using a rolled-up jacket as a pillow. He listened to the soft breathing of the boy and the calm rhythm of Vaylari's breath. For the first time in months, he didn't feel alone. But deep inside, he also felt afraid. Not of Vaylari, not of her past, but of what might come next, now that he had something to lose. It was the middle of the night when the knock came. Bang, 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 loud, sharp, angry. Jace sat up quickly from the floor, heart pounding. He grabbed the old pipe he kept by the wall, just in case. Vaylari also woke up holding her child tightly, her eyes full of sudden fear. Bang! Bang! Again, Jace moved to the door slowly. "Stay back," he whispered. He peeked through the small viewer hole. 3 figures. 2 of them wore the sharp red armor of the zone enforcers, local guards who worked for credits, not law. The third was a short man with glowing orange eyes. Jace knew that face. Trader Rorn, the one who sold him the blanket. "Open up," one of the guards shouted. "We have reason to believe you're hiding unregistered aliens." Jace froze. His blood ran cold. He looked back at Vaylari. She was already hiding her child under the bed. She moved quickly, her hands trembling. Her eyes met Jace's, and he saw it. Not just fear. Hopelessness. Like she'd been caught like this before, and it never ended well. Jace turned to the door and shouted, "I live alone! No one's here!" Rorn's voice hissed back, "Lies! I saw her leave your room last week. You gave her a blanket. You think I didn't notice? You owe me more than 1 credit now, human." The guards raised their weapons. "We're coming." In. Jace's heart beat faster. He had to do something. Fast. He reached up and pulled open the emergency vent behind his heater. It was narrow, but just wide enough. "Go," he whispered to Valari. "Take him and crawl through. Now." She hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll stall them." She stared at him, eyes full of something unspoken, then nodded. She hugged her son close and crawled into the vent, vanishing into the shadows. Just as she disappeared, the door burst open. Jace stumbled back, pretending to look surprised. One guard shoved him against the wall. "Where is she?" "Who?" Rorn stepped in, sneering. "Don't play dumb. I want what's mine." "Your blanket?" Jace spat. "I paid for it." The second guard kicked over a chair, searching the small room. He looked under the bed. Empty. He tore through the shelves. "Room's clear," he said. The first guard grabbed Jace by the shirt. "We'll be watching you, human." They stormed out. Rorn gave Jace one last hateful glare. "You'll regret this," he muttered before disappearing into the snow. Minutes passed. Then, slowly, Valari crawled out of the vent. Her child was asleep in her arms. She looked at Jace like she didn't know who he was anymore. "You risked your life," she whispered. "For me." He sat down, exhausted. "I told you, you're safe here." "But why? You could be arrested, killed." Jace looked at her. "Because I see you." She didn't speak. She just walked to him, slowly, softly, and sat down beside him on the floor. Her head rested gently on his shoulder. She didn't cry this time. She didn't tremble. She just rested. For the first time in years. The storm outside had calmed, but inside the room a new storm was starting. The child, small, thin, and quiet, was no longer eating. At first, Jace thought the boy was just tired. He had slept through the entire day. But when Valari tried to wake him for food, the boy didn't open his eyes. He just shivered. His body was hot. Too hot. Sweat soaked through his thin shirt. His lips were dry and cracked. His breathing was weak. "Something's wrong," Valari whispered, panic rising in her voice. Jace knelt beside the bed. He placed his hand on the boy's forehead. "Burning." "I'll find help," he said. "No," Valari said quickly, grabbing his arm. "You can't go to the clinics, they'll report us." "I'm not going to a clinic." He stood up, grabbed his coat, and stormed out the door into the cold night. The streets were empty. Snow had turned into ice. Jace moved fast, heart racing. He didn't know where to go at first, but then he remembered. Boro, the black market medic who lived behind the scrap piles. He wasn't kind. He wasn't cheap. But he didn't ask questions. Jace reached the old bunker and banged on the metal door. After a long pause, it creaked open. Boro stood there smoking a rusted pipe. "What do you want, human?" "I need fever meds. Strong ones. For a child." Boro blew smoke into Jace's face. "Payment?" "I have nothing." Boro began to close the door. "Wait." Jace reached into his pocket and pulled out a chain. His father's dog tag. "This is all I have left." Boro stared at it, then grabbed it and tossed a small vial into Jace's hands. "This better be worth something." Jace didn't look back. He ran. Back at the room, Valari was crying quietly, whispering into her son's ear in her native tongue. Her hands shook as she wiped the sweat from his forehead with a torn cloth. Jace knelt beside her and showed her the vial. "We only have 1 dose." Without waiting, she carefully dropped the liquid into the boy's mouth 1 drop at a time. Then they waited. Minutes passed, an hour. Then, finally, he coughed and breathed deeper. His eyes opened, slowly, Mama? He said in a weak voice. Villari's tears poured freely now. She held him close, rocking him gently. Jace sat back, his body shaking with relief. Later that night, Villari sat next to Jace as the child slept peacefully between them. You didn't owe us this, she whispered. I know. You could have let us freeze. I could have. She looked at him for a long time. No one's ever done this for me before. Jace looked at her. You don't need to pay me back. I want to, she said softly. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away gently. You don't owe me your body either, Villari. Just stay alive. That's enough. She stared at him, and then smiled. A real one this time. Not sad, not scared, but full of something else. Hope. Outside, snow continued to fall, but inside that little room, warmth had finally returned. Not from the heater, not from the soup, but from a simple human choice. To care. The boy was sleeping peacefully now, wrapped in warm cloth and resting in the center of the bed. His small chest rose and fell with slow, steady breaths. Villari stood by the window, her back to Jace. Snowflakes tapped softly against the cold glass. She didn't move for a long time. Jace sat in the corner, half asleep, his eyes heavy. His mind had barely slowed down since the fever, the medicine run, the danger, the relief. Then Villari turned around. Slowly. Carefully. She walked across the room, stopping just in front of him. Jace, she said softly. You've done more for me than anyone ever has. He opened his eyes and sat up straighter. You gave me a blanket when I had nothing. You saved my son's life. You even gave away your last piece of family. She sat down beside him, close. Too close. I don't have credits. I don't have anything to give you, she whispered. But I'm not useless. Her hand moved gently toward his. Let me repay you. I'll be yours. Jace didn't move. For a moment the room felt frozen again, but not from the cold. Then he looked her in the eyes and smiled sadly. No, he said softly. She blinked, confused. Why not? Because you're not a debt to be paid. He stood up slowly and picked up a soft blanket from the chair. He wrapped it around her shoulders like he had that very first night in the snow. You're not here because you owe me, he said gently. You're here because you're safe, because someone should care, that's all. Villari lowered her head, her voice trembled. I was sold once, owned once, and left behind when I became useless. Every time someone helped me, they wanted something, and now you don't? I want something, Jace said. She looked up, heart suddenly tight. I want you to heal. I want your boy to grow up without fear. And I want you both to know, not everyone in this galaxy is cruel. She stared at him for a long time. Then silently she leaned forward, not to kiss him, not to offer anything, but to rest her forehead against his chest. She exhaled, and for the first time, she let herself fall into someone's arms without fear. No shame, no price, no chains, just warmth, just kindness, just trust. That night, Jace made up a spot on the floor again, but this time, Villari walked over, picked up her son from the bed, and placed him gently beside Jace's blanket pile. You shouldn't sleep on the cold floor anymore, she said. He looked up. But the bed is yours. She shook her head. Not mine. Not yours. Ours. If that's all right. He smiled. It is. The three of them slept together that night. Not as strangers. Not as a protector and refugees. But as something new. Something fragile. Something beginning. The snow had melted. Spring came late to the colony, but it came. The icy winds grew softer. The night still held a chill, but the sharp bite of winter was gone, and so was the fear. Inside the little metal room, laughter filled the air. The boy, Leo, chased a broken robot toy around the floor, giggling every time it bumped into Jace's boots. He was healthy now, stronger, brighter. His smile had returned, and so had his appetite. Velari stood near the heater, stirring soup. Her hands were steady. Her eyes, once filled with dread, now sparkled with peace. Jace sat at the work table, fixing a rusted gear drive. He glanced up now and then, at the boy, at the woman who once trembled in silence, and at the home that had quietly formed around him. It didn't happen all at once, but it happened. That night, the stars shone through the cracked ceiling window. The wind whispered through the vents, no longer angry, just gentle. Jace sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. Velari came up behind him and sat beside him, holding 2 mugs of warm tea. She offered him one. Their hands touched. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. They sat together for a long moment, sipping quietly. Then she said, "Do you remember the blanket?" He smiled. "The one that cost my last credit?" She nodded, smiling too. "I still have it." She stood, pulled it out from the storage box and placed it over the bed. Then she looked at him with soft eyes. "It was never the blanket that saved me." He looked into her eyes, unsure. "It was the way you gave it," she said, not expecting anything in return. "That warmth wasn't in the cloth. It was in you." She sat down beside him, closer now. Not with fear, not with payment, in her heart, but with something real, genuine. She leaned against his shoulder and whispered, "I don't sleep beside you to repay a debt, Jace. I do it because I feel safe there." He turned his head slowly, meeting her gaze. "And I hold you," he said softly. "Not because you need me, but because I choose you." Their hands found each other in the quiet. No promises, no vows, just understanding and love. Not owed, not bought. Shared. Later that night they lay side by side. The boy snuggled between them, snoring softly. The old blanket, frayed but warm, covered all 3 of them. Outside, stars blinked silently over the sleeping colony, and inside, a human man and an alien woman, once broken by the cold, now found warmth not just in a bed, but in each other's hearts.